Today, I'm going to show you 5 awesome kick-ass kettlebell exercises to hammer your legs. As we do them, I'm going to show you some of the tips and techniques that make these exercises actually useful. As a doctor, I give kettlebell exercises to my patients because there's a lot of things you can do with kettlebells. They are very safe, they are very effective, and if you can follow some of these tips, not necessarily tricks, tips and techniques, you can get a lot out of these kettlebell exercises. But first, welcome to the Anatomy of Therapy. I'm Dr. John Cybulski. We are going over kettlebell exercises today. This is Marcus Philly. The two things I really want you to focus on with these kettlebell exercises are the position of the feet down here, and then the position in which he holds the weight. These are the two main things that will change each exercise and kind of target a different group of muscles. We'll also go over the muscles that are involved, and I want to show you, I think it's the 4th or 5th exercise is probably my absolute favorite way to hit the glutes. I get a lot of comments, a lot of questions on, hey, I'm working out, I feel my left glute, I don't feel my right, or vice versa, I can't feel my left glute, the left glute has gone rogue. How do I engage that glute? Why is my knee pain hurt on one side? I think kettlebell exercises, particularly this strand of kettlebell exercises, will give you a good idea of how to even out your workout and just make your workout most efficient. Blah, blah, blah. Let's get on with it. This is Marcus Philly. Much thanks to Marcus. Let's go quickly over all of them. So the first one is what we call a goblet squat. So he's holding it in front as if he's drinking a goblet, classic old style. And then the primary weight is going to be on this front foot, nice and flat, but we have a leg back here. So some people will call this a kickstand or a mini curtsy or just a foot behind goblet squat. We'll talk about what that does in a second. Second one is kind of more of your basic squat. Feet are wider than shoulder width, but you'll notice this kettlebell is up in the rack position. I got to talk about this grip later as well. And then we go on to, this would be an old school kickstand kettlebell goblet squat. Again, position of the hands, position of the feet are going to define what it is. And then we have this curtsy one. This curtsy one I could talk about for hours because there's so much money in, hey, come back into that curtsy one. It keeps going away. The deep curtsy. This one is magical for so many different ways. I give it to so many patients. Can't wait to tell you all about that one. And the last one is closed leg or narrow stance. Again, we talk about stance, we talk about holding it. And this time he's holding it by the horns. What's the difference between holding it by the horns versus holding it by the bell? We're going to get into all of that today on the Anatomy of Therapy. Let's just start cooking, yeah? Okay, so let's go to this one. The first one, we talk about stance. This is the mini curtsy or leg behind. It's not a true kickstand because kickstand would be straight back. And then we've got the goblet squat. So he's holding the bell, he's not holding the horns. One of the things that this bell is going to be doing as it is holding in front of us is going to allow our center of gravity to be able to shift backwards. So his torso, where if the weight was on his back, would pull him further back. Now that the weight is in the front, it is basically allowing him to sit further back. It's also then driving the center of weight over his quads. So you can see his center of gravity is now no longer his torso. This is honestly a massive kettlebell. This is probably a 72-pound kettlebell. It is right over his quads. So he is going to get a lot of work through these legs by holding it in the front, and so will you. Hold the weight in the front, hold it in that goblet squat position. This is one of the ways to target the legs. Now, as he's going down, you'll notice the tempo is pretty much even as he goes up and as he goes down. But you're trying to maintain the same amount of weight on the front as you do on the back. And that weight, you'll notice this kettlebell goes straight down and that kettlebell goes straight up. That's really what you're thinking about. Straight down, straight back up. One of the big things I see people miss in the squat, and let's go over this in the second one, is that people do not consider pulling themselves down into the squat. That is one of the keys to feeling the full workout, is pulling yourself down and then pushing yourself back up. Now, this one is a little bit more evident. So this is going to answer one of our questions. Why do I feel it in this leg, not the other? Why do I feel it in one glute and not the other? Well, this is because we are asymmetrical beings. We have asymmetrical habits. We use our right hand more than our left. There's a million different ways that we're asymmetrical, but we want to work out asymmetrically to combat those natural internal asymmetries. I'm not going to bore you with all the doctor stuff. Pull yourself down into the squat. You notice how he really thinks about pulling himself down. It's an active movement going down into the squat. Now, one other thing with the grip, I told you about this before, we've talked about it on other videos perhaps, but you'll notice that this grip is straight up and if not a little bit kind of cockeyed there at the wrist. Do not let the wrist kind of fall backward. You don't want this action with the wrist. You'll see his wrist is forward and a little bit goosenecked, as they say. So he has control of that weight. The weight is just kind of sitting there. And again, you don't have to go this heavy, but try to maintain an upright torso, pull yourself down, and then explode up. This is the rack position. You want to do about a dozen of these on one side, flip the kettlebell, of course, to the other side, and do the other dozen. One side might be harder. Really focus on making both sides even. As a doctor who sees plenty of patients with asymmetries. Asymmetries is the biggest pain causer as well. We need to balance out our workouts, to balance out our lives. Okay, cool. Let's go on to the third one, Marcus. A couple more reps, buddy. Okay, this is a true kickstand, and then we're back to the goblet squat. Some people say it's easier to hold it like this. Some people say it's easier to hold it by the bell. But this kickstand, this back toe is not going to go too far behind the opposite one. So where is the weight on the feet? The weight is primarily midfoot here, and then we're gonna go forefoot here. Heel and midfoot on the down leg, and then this leg is going to get mostly forefoot. So it's not a lunge per se. You're still keeping your gravity pretty central to make less room for errors. But make sure you keep your heel up on this backside. And again, pull yourself down into the squat. Holding that weight there. You can see how it's letting him go forward. He's got to be getting tired at this point in the workout. But this is going to really put a lot of load through these quads safely. Going into a little bit of a stagger stance, this kickstand is also going to offload one of the knees. So typically the forward knee is going to be the one that gets a little bit trashed. You can save it by giving this kickstand the support in the back to take the load off of the front of the knee and move it more into the quad to feel the strain there. That's what this kickstand is doing, is taking you off. So typically we want to go forward into this knee, but this leg is going to pull us back and make sure that our quads get a great workout. Our legs get the workout. Now, let's go to the next one. I believe this is my favorite. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. This is the curtsy squat. So you are going to step back. This leg is on its own. And then once you step back, you kneel and come back up. Step back, kneel, come back up. You'll also see we are holding in the rack position with a great wrist position as well. But this is what's happening on this side. And we talked about it many times, but alternating and reciprocating. This goes again with our everything is a little bit asymmetrical. And if you can do this on both sides, you'll probably feel a little bit different on one side versus the other. So you can add a couple reps and balance yourself out with this exercise. So on this side, we're going to get a lot of glute because this is hip flexion. Our weight is shifting over this way. This kettlebell is well over here. So we've twisted this. Hip is here. This hip is essentially outside of the knee in relation to his center of gravity. So all of this weight is going through that glute. This is a way to wind up the hip so that you can load up the glute. So here's a great step. You can see the weight is back here, right? His center of gravity is here. And with this leg kind of catching back, I'm guessing that the force is going back that way, which means that the force is going literally right into the glute. I can't recommend curtsy squats enough. If you feel one glute less than another or one glute more than another, curtsy squats are the way to go. But yeah, you step back and curtsy as deep as you can. You just tap that knee and come back. So you're shifting your weight over, you're shifting your weight back into the glute. This will burn up your glutes like crazy. If you want to go wild and hold the weight on the other side, that's totally fine too. That will change up where you feel it. You'll have to twist your torso around a little bit more. Experiment with it. You can't honestly go wrong with the curtsy squat. Curtsy squat all day if you want your glutes to work. It's also incredibly safe for the knees because again, you're shifting your weight back off the knee. You're shifting your weight back off the knee. You're going to feel tons in your quad and your glutes. Curtsy squats, please do some curtsy squats. They're so good for you. They untwist your spine. They open up your hip flexor. Let me show you how they open up the hip flexor. So in this position, the hip flexor is right here. And typically they stay flexed like it would on this side. On the opposite side, you'll notice this opening happening there, right? You'll see closed on this side. Since this leg is going back, this leg is staying up, we are getting all sorts of opening through that hip flexor. So if we get this glute activation on one side, we get hip flexor inhibition on the other. Doctors, you know how important the hip flexors are. Curtsy squats. I'm going to shut up about it. And the last one, this is just kind of a finisher to crush your legs. Narrow stance so that you cannot, like we said, narrow stance. And now he's holding it by the horns, which means that the weight is going to be a little bit lower. You can see it very close to his core, his solar plexus there. So his center of gravity is lowering. And then narrow stance means that his legs aren't going to be able to go out wide, or the legs aren't going to be able to go in much either, or they'll just kind of knock into each other. They'll have a minimal room to adapt, and basically you're just going to have to sit there and crush your quads over and over and over. And you can see he's getting a big pump through his quads. This is a 72-pound kettlebell probably. That's a great workout. What is the position of your feet? What is the position of the weight you're holding? These two things will influence where your workout goes. Hold the kettlebell in a good position. Think about the position of your feet. Pull yourself down into the squat. Curtsy squat so you can naturally work out some of your own asymmetries. I think that's all I got. Like below, we've got a podcast. Please check us out. We've got a Patreon you can support us on. Hit the subscribe button if you found this valuable. Share this with somebody. Hope you enjoyed that kettlebell workout and have a great day. Peace.